Tonight on News 5 Live, COVID in the Prime Minister's office. Prime Minister Briceño and his Chief of Staff, Stuart Leslie, have tested positive for COVID-19. Severe flooding is reported in Corozal, Orange Walk, Cayo, and Belize districts. In the village of Maypen, over 100 heads of cattle have been rescued, while in Masca, farmers are losing their vegetables to the floodwaters. In crime news, Jeffrey Contreras has been charged with abetment to murder for the killing of Sean Menzies, while Adawan Usher has been charged with the murder of Eden Mejia. Teachers have been instructed to show up to work only on Mondays for the remainder of the semester. We'll also hear from the PSU on the fire sale of government assets. And what is the future of the pantry? Details of these stories and more coming up in tonight's newscast.
I'm sure you heard of Smart's new loyalty rewards program, and I'm even
evening. Welcome to News 5 Live for Monday, November 23rd. I am Marlene Cuellar. The coronavirus has reached the top levels of government. The Office of the Prime Minister has confirmed that PM Briceño has tested positive for COVID-19. Briceño was swabbed today in Belize City and the results came back positive. He is asymptomatic. Since taking office, the PM has been moving around establishing his government, and in the past few days, he visited flooded areas in the northern parts of the country. The Prime Minister will be spending 2 weeks in isolation, and since the work continues, Tuesday's cabinet meeting will be held virtually. His Chief of Staff and Cabinet Secretary Stuart Leslie has also tested positive and is showing minor symptoms. Test results have come back negative for Briceño's family. Since the November 11th elections, Jorge Melina Spat from Cayo West and Mike Spat from Toledo East have also tested positive. Those persons, including cabinet members who have been in close contact with the Prime Minister, will also be swabbed. Over the past 3 days, 14 persons were reported to have died due to COVID-19, including well-known Ian Mariano, a former educator and sports enthusiast who was involved in the Belize District Basketball Association. Mariano was also a sports commentator for radio. On Friday, 5 deaths were reported: 3 elderly males from Corozal, 1 male in his 50s and 1 female in her 90s, both from Orange Walk. By Saturday night, 5 more COVID-19 deaths were reported: 2 males and 3 females. 3 of the 5 victims were at the KHMH COVID-19 unit and had been critically ill for days. The other 2 victims were being treated at the Northern Regional Hospital. On Sunday night, an additional 4 persons were reported dead due to COVID-19. A female from the Cayo district and a male from the Corozal district died at the KHMH. A female Shaibe village resident in her 70s died at the Corozal Community Hospital, and a male in his 60s died at the Western Regional Hospital. There are 2,225 active cases to date. The Ministry of Health and Wellness says that as it moves to scale up testing given the increasing numbers, all regional hospitals and most community hospitals have now implemented rapid testing for symptomatic patients and those close contacts of confirmed cases. Meanwhile, the incessant rains from Hurricane Iota continue to drench from northern to western Belize. It has caused flooding in many parts, affecting many industries, from livestock to vegetables. Many highways and bridges are impassable tonight, and more rains are expected later in the week, which means that further flooding is forecasted. In the city, the picture is much the same. There is water almost everywhere in most parts of low-lying areas in Balama phases 3 to 5. Some residents have left their homes seeking refuge elsewhere, while others will have to traverse through the water if they have to leave their homes. Here is News 5's Isana Caetano with this report.
Residents of Belama, phases 3 and 4, are severely inconvenienced getting into and out of their homes, as well as traversing nearby streets. There is floodwater everywhere. From the look of it, the deluge that has overwhelmed Apollo Street since the beginning of the month will not be receding anytime soon. Until then, small cars won't be able to access this thoroughfare and foot traffic is miserable.
This is the first time I seen this place like this, right, on the water. So well, like said, you know, they should take an eye of this place here now and try lift it up higher. That's it, right, higher, because you know it's look very bad. So it must go a way to fix, right? So I'll do it. Leave it up higher, leave it up higher.
Raising the street, however, would create another problem. The displaced water would find its way into other low-lying areas, including the homes of families that are already inundated. Flooding is a perennial issue in this community, and despite the development that has taken place here, that issue has never been addressed.
My house is flooded with water and almost wet my stuff in there, and lot of mess in the house because of the water.
Like many other properties in this neighborhood, Dinar Westby's home is waterlogged. Along with a significant rise in water level has come unwanted guests, forcing Westby and his wife to evacuate and seek refuge elsewhere. Crocodiles are showing up in all sizes. You're packing up what you have here to go to the north, at least for a couple of days until the water goes down?
Sir? Yes, sir. I'm going outside of my house until slow down the water, and that's all.
How long have you been living in this area?
7 years. 7 years.
Is this the worst that it has gotten?
Yes, sir. No, 3 years ago, when we have a next flooding, just similar like this, more higher, a little bit higher, but we still are living the same thing because they don't clean the coal boards, they don't do nothing, and that need to clean, make the water flow up on the side and make this thing stop to happen.
With additional rainfall expected later this week, the existing situation will only become exacerbated. An appeal is being made to Area Representative Francis Fonseca to see what can be done to assist residents who have found themselves desolate.
The people who live here, they have a hard time to come out, you know. The only thing is that the bus, city bus pass over here. Too. It's only way to come out from this place, right? Because walking, I think you can't make it walking. Yeah.
Would there be any appeal from you to anybody in authority who could help to resolve this situation going forward?
Well, to help the situation, the only way to help the situation should be the manager, the one in charge of this place. Yes, that's the only person that could take the interest of fixing this place here. Yeah, that's the only things that I could say, right?
Reporting for News 5, I am Isani Cayetano.
In Belize rural, flooding has affected many farmers in the livestock and vegetable industries. Since Friday, cattle have been rescued from the village of Maypen and taken to higher ground in Orange Walk and Cayo districts. Meanwhile, in Maskell, acres of vegetable farms have been destroyed by flood waters. News 5's Dwayne Moody was in the rural communities where access is only by boat.
The torrential rains over the past week did not let up until Sunday, but by then, the country had been drenched and several districts are reporting severe flooding. In the village of Maypen, located several miles off the Philip Coulson Highway, access to the area can only be made by boat, as the entire land that encompasses the village is underwater. While its residents have not evacuated their bread and butter, some 350 heads of cattle were under threat. Since Friday, several heads of cattle have been rescued as livestock extraction continues with assistance from the government and Mennonite farmers.
It's over the land now, completely taken over, so there is no land for our animal in that area, right? So with that said, we had get some assistance from Mr. Mai, the Prime Minister, our area rep, Mr. Leal, along with the Mennonites, who is giving us a big assistance in that area at this moment. The government has assigned 2 places for us. One is Yo Creek and Central Farm. Right now we are starting off in Yo Creek. It already take 100. Now we are here again doing it. So it probably will be Central Farm will start this week now with, right? Like I said, going over everything in a small terms, it's lot of work. To take out 50 cow per day. 50 cow per day, whereby we have to use boat 3 miles. Then the Mennonites bring in a spider with a trailer, take it about a mile to the trailer that hooked up to the vehicle, then move off from there.
Wow, so any access to the village itself is by boat. Further east in Maskell, the Oriana family have been farming the land in the village for 3 decades, providing vegetables to markets in Belize City and Orange Walk. The family has several plots of farmland that is used to cultivate tomatoes, sweet peppers, cabbages, and more. All tens of thousands of dollars in investment have been destroyed by the flood waters, not to mention the livestock that they have.
Right now we have tomatoes, sweet pepper, watermelons, cabbage, and well, everything is underwater right now. And if some is not underwater, the amount of water that the plant sucks still affects the whole plant, and the plants have to die because it's an excess of water. Well, more or less, in my family, there are about 9 to 10,000 plants of tomatoes, like 4,000 plants of sweet pepper, and like one acre and a half of cabbage. And that's a part of the cattle that, well, the cattle have to find the higher land to be safe of the water too.
Belize Rural NEMA Coordinator Alpheus Gillett says that history would show this phenomenon occurs once every 10 years, give or take a year or two. Gillett says that the situation in Belize Rural is expected to get worse before it gets better.
It's bad in Belize Rural, and I am anticipating that it will get a little worse before it gets better. What is good news is that we see now that the rain has eased off a little, so that's good news, right? But we still see some water coming from the west. So and our waterways are to its capacity. It can't take anymore. Like for example, we see now Crooked Tree Lagoon, like I said before, the water start backing up. So we have water backing up from Crooked Tree Lagoon, and it's also coming from the west. So it's like a double impact. So let's hope that we'll see some improvement some later part of this week if the rain does not continue. But we should see some improvement, but I believe it'll get a little worse before it gets better.
Dwayne Moody for News 5.
Some 50 families in the village of Lord's Bank off the Philip Golson Highway have been affected by the flooding. Since last week, the water level began rising in the village, and today we got a tour of the area by boat, thanks to a resident who assisted our team to access the area. The water is about 5 to 6 feet deep in some areas, as streets are completely submerged and residents access their homes via canoes. Others are stranded inside their homes and are being assisted by NEMO. One resident is concerned about snakes and crocodiles known to be in the area. Today, while we were with the Belize Rural NEMO coordinator, Alpheus Gillett, he briefed us about the situation in Lord's Bank.
Well, of course, Lord's Bank always get the loss of the water coming down, because before it reaches the sea, it reaches Lord's Bank, and we have about 50 families more or less at this time affected by Lord's Bank. But most of the people living in that part of Lord's Bank lives on stilt, and basically they are staying in their home. But what we've been doing, NEMO along with Relief and Supply, we've been assisting those people with food supplies and water. So we continue to do assessment. We continue to take food and supplies for food and water for those people in those areas.
There are several access roads and bridges that are impassable tonight as floodwaters continue to flow down towards the sea. A NEMO advisory states that in the Corozal district, Caledonia, Sartaneja, Copper Bank, and Progresa roads are impassable, and the Consejo road is inundated. In Cayo, the low-lying wooden bridge and the Iguana Creek Bridge are underwater, and in More Tomorrow Village, both roads are impassable at this time. In Stan Creek, the coastal road is trafficable from Hope Creek to Gales Point, and motorists need to drive with extreme caution as culverts are being replaced due to ongoing construction of the highway. Numerous small wooden, concrete, and hammock bridges are either destroyed or significantly damaged. In the Belize district, the Boom Hatterville Road as well as Bomba Causeway are impassable by small vehicles. The Crooked Tree Causeway remains underwater, while in Santa Marta and Flowers Bank, roads are only accessible to high vehicles.
The Tree Causeway has been cut off since the beginning of this bad situation, but now we have Bomba, which is more or less 2 feet. The causeway is 2 feet underwater, and only big vehicle can access in and out from that community. We have now Flowers Bank, we have been assisted by the Belize Defense Force to transport people from Flowers Bank, because the Flowers Bank Road is almost a mile underwater at the deepest point. I would say 3 feet underwater. So the BDF high trucks, they're taking people early in the morning who is working in Belize City, and in the evening they're assisting those villagers to get back within their community. Then in addition to that, we have the Boom Road that takes you to the River Valley area that is cut off, and then the Boom Hattieville Road is I would say 2 feet plus underwater, so small vehicle cannot pass in that area.
In the west, the Iguana Creek Bridge remains underwater. The Belize River is slowly receding since the second flood, but the bridge remains impassable for vehicles. The bridge links communities such as Buena Vista and Spanish Lookout to the George Price Highway. Residents of the communities are now using the Farmers Express Road, built and maintained by the Spanish Lookout community. Cattle traders like Joseph Friesen say that the flooding has affected their business.
The river is flooded right here, you can see, and it's blocking the bridge for now almost a week. And the vehicles have to go around to the Farmers Express Road to go in and out of Spanish Lookout. And also we can go take another road, is Bullet Tree Road, which has been very bad condition in the rains. And but thank God we have this road that's giving us access to Spanish Lookout, the Farmers Express Road, which is built by the Spanish Lookout community. And that's just the access we have to Spanish Lookout right now.
Is this the worst you've seen the river flood?
Well, this is not the worst flood. The flood before this flood, 2 weeks ago, that was the highest flood that we have seen in my lifetime here. It was 35 feet above the bridge, and the bridge was closed for about 10 days for the traffic to cross. And at the moment, it is almost about 1 week almost that's been closed now since the second flood. And this time around, the flood only came up to 15 feet above the bridge.
Okay, but it's going down slowly?
It's going down very slowly, yeah. It's still, it's going down very slowly.
Okay. So talk to us about the cattle and getting the cattle out of Spanish Lookout. You use the back road. That's more expensive for you guys?
Well, it definitely is a lot more mileage and a lot more rougher road to travel, so it takes a lot more time and also more wear and tear for your vehicles because it's a rough road that we have to travel, so definitely it's more expensive.
There are a total of 288 persons in 14 shelters in 3 districts. 57 people are in 2 shelters in Orange Walk and about 42 in Belize Rural, where 5 shelters are open. In the Cayo district, there are 4 shelters open. In Cala Creek, where 88 persons have sought refuge, and in San Ignacio, there are 15 persons in 1 shelter. Also in the Cayo district, 86 persons from the village of More Tomorrow are in 2 shelters. NEMO's Alpheus Gillett breaks down the numbers in Belize Rural.
Well, in terms of lives, people living along the river banks, most of them are in shelters. We have about 4 official shelters open. We have about 60 people in shelter in total in the Belize Rural area, and the situation might get worse. But most of all, the people that should be moved are evacuated already from their house into the shelters.
These shelters are in the Borboom area. Where specifically?
Well, we have 1 shelter open in the Borboom area. That's the St. Therese Primary. We have about 25 persons in that shelter. We have shelter open in Bermuda Landing, but people that are in Bermuda Landing are from Lemonal. We have the ranch. Still have people in the primary school in Rancho. We have people in the shelters in Crooked Tree, and now we have in Bomba. Some people are in the church at Bomba, and some people are staying with family members.
Food pantry and COVID-19 food assistance programs are on pause, and the pantry is getting a rebrand of sorts. Today, when we caught up with Minister Dolores Balderramos Garcia, we asked her about the distribution of COVID-19 assistance and how that's coming along. Well, Minister Balderramos Garcia told us that her ministry has had to put the program on pause for a few days because it has become necessary to review and explore how it can be expanded to reach more rural communities. On the topic of the food pantry, which was introduced by the previous administration some years ago to help low-income families with groceries, that program, according to Balderramos Garcia, is getting a new name. It will now be called Grocery Bag. These forms of aid, according to Balderramos Garcia, may be subjected to some modifications based on this administration's policy changes in the long run. Here's how she explains it.
The assistance coming out of your ministry for persons affected by COVID, where does that stand at this time? Does that assistance continue?
It will continue, but we have put a small pause because we want to make a review. There are actually two different programs. What we used to call the pantry, and by the way, that word is abolished. We're calling it grocery bag now. So we have the grocery bag, but then you also have the food assistance under the COVID emergency regulations. Now, we want to help the people who need it most, but clearly as a new administration, we have to make a little bit of review. It won't stop right now, but clearly the policy decisions going forward will have to be made by Cabinet. And I will take my instruction from Cabinet. But I can speak to say that we have paused to make certain reviews as to the suppliers, the distributors, and the recipients. And of course, with a mandate like what we received, we have to assist the rural areas a little bit more, because I think it was a little bit heavily Belize City. And now, as you know, the new government, there are 3 Belize rural constituencies that are represented by our administration now, and I have to make sure that we try to divide up a little pie. In the same way that the Prime Minister had to divide up the pie of portfolios, we have to divide a limited pie, and it is not sustainable in the very long run because we're talking about loan funding, but we will do our best to be as fair as we possibly can, keeping in mind the political mandate. But we won't be snatching away food from people who continue to have the need. Just give us a little chance to get our feet on the ground.
Minister, any indication how long that pause will be?
It'll be a couple of days there. It'll be a couple of days. Please, let me assure you, no, it's not going to be 2 weeks, 3 weeks, for a month. Christmas they come. Christmas they come and I want me done, no? So we will do our best. But realizing, of course, that we're in difficult times. So work with us on that, no?
Rebranding from removing it from pantry to grocery bags. What prompted that move?
Same thing. It's the same thing, but this is personal now, and it has been renamed grocery bag instead of pantry.
In a previous interview with the CEO of the Human Development, she stated that you have to qualify to get food. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, we're not taking away the qualification aspect. And I have to say that the people in the ministry have been working very hard because there is a level of accountability to the funders, the OPEC fund. So please, we're not going to be running roughshod over the people who are the professionals and who have been there. Of that, I can assure you.
Coming up, the PSU calls for an investigation into the fire sale of government assets. The Public Service Union is calling for a commission of inquiry into the sale of government assets, including vehicles and pricey furniture that were disposed of at rock-bottom prices ahead of the November 11 general elections. The PSU has issued a statement requesting that the newly formed Briceño administration look into a recent fire sale in which government vehicles were being sold for as low as $200. It is an affront to the workers' union, which was in dialogue with the previous administration to curtail expenses that were not necessary, particularly during the economic fallout that resulted from the COVID-19 pandemic. Today we spoke with First Vice President Dean Flowers, who reiterated the PSU's position.
We're a bit disappointed and not necessarily surprised, but very disappointed that the fire sale of government property continues. And it is something that we believe that needs to stop. However, there seems to be absolutely no political will to ensure that those who are entrusted with the care of government assets are held accountable now. And so the union is simply doing its part as part of the necessary vigilance that is now needed in improving its economic situation. And so we thought that it was prudent for us to highlight this practice that continues to prevail each and every election cycle. And we're hoping that stronger mechanisms will be put in place and that individuals who continue facilitate these kind of sale of government property are held accountable.
Now, I noticed that you guys are, one, demanding an investigation into what transpired regarding those sales. And secondly, you're asking for an inventory of all the items that were sold off during a specific period. To what end would this serve? Should there be an investigation into what took place, and of course, you guys to get a handle of how many vehicles or how many pieces of furniture or what have you were sold off?
Yes, that is indeed the whole objective. We're currently in a dialogue with the government. We've not with the new administration, but as you are well aware, we have been in dialogue with the administration, the outgoing administration, surrounding cost savings now. And as part of our due diligence, as part of our analysis to try to identify those areas in which the cost savings report highlighted.
According to Flowers, Prime Minister John Briceño, who's also Minister of Finance, should investigate the Assets and Utilities Unit, which also oversees the Vehicle Care Unit, where fleecing is purportedly taking place.
Addressing vehicles and securing government vehicles is something that we realize that we all have to do better in keeping a vigilant on. And it is no secret that that is one of the areas where there has been some of the most abuse in the system. We hear about a lot of abuse, a lot of corruption within the Ministry of Lands, within the Immigration Department, but in the Vehicle Care Unit, unless you start digging into those vehicles which have been acquired over the past and the price at which they have been disposed, and whether or not they're even on the government books. I can tell, I believe it was Auditor General's report whereby she reported that I believe over 170 odd vehicles were missing from within the Ministry of National Security. So one has to ask the question, what exactly is happening within the Assets and Utilities Unit of the Ministry of Finance? We know that there is leasing of government assets going on in there, but nobody seems to be holding anybody accountable. And we're hoping that by us now putting this press release out there and calling on the Ministry of or the Minister of Finance to commission an inquiry into that unit to look at historically what has been going on in there so that mechanisms so that we can mitigate in this abusive continuing in that particular unit of the Ministry of Finance.
And while the PSU applauds those ministers who have agreed not to get a new government vehicle assigned to them, the union is also asking that they follow the recommendations that have been put forward in respect of vehicle maintenance, since the annual cost of upkeep is approximately $30 million annually.
I want to express sincere gratitude to those recently appointed ministers who have expressed openly, and I hope honestly that they would be fine with not being issued a government vehicle now. As I stated earlier in the interview, collectively, where acquisition, maintenance, and fuel is concerned, it's hovering well over $30 million collectively. And so it is important that we get cooperation from those at the top. And cooperation meaning that they're provided, as recommended in the cost savings report, an allowance for fuel, but that where vehicle is concerned, that they're either given an advance to purchase a vehicle, allowance for that to be repaid, but more so for the maintenance and the bulk of the expense that comes with having a vehicle that is reduced.
For the remainder of the first semester, primary and high school teachers across the country are being asked to report to work on Mondays only. It follows a decision made earlier today by Minister of Education Francis Fonseca and Minister of State Dr. Louis Zabanet. Teachers will now show up for work at the start of the week to assist with learning packages on the following days, November 30th, December 7th, and 14th. Schools will close for Christmas break on December 18th and reopen on January 11th, but there is still no word when students will be allowed to return to their classrooms. This afternoon, News 5 spoke by phone with President Elena Smith of the Belize National Teachers Union.
Okay, so we've not had an opportunity to meet with the new government as yet. As you are aware, they are still, I guess, putting together their people and trying to get them in place. So we've not had that opportunity as yet. What we know is that a memo was sent out by Dr. Bob indicating that teachers should continue working from home for this week and that they should return to the classroom on Monday, the 30th. Whether that will remain as is, we don't know yet. We'll see how the week turns out, no?
I know that several concerns had been raised over the past few weeks with respect to teachers who may be exposed to the coronavirus either at school or on their way to the workplace. Where do we stand with that now in light of the fact that there is a current flooding that allows you to remain at home until November 30th, but going forward you'd still have those concerns?
Correct. So those concerns still remain in place, and we all know that cases continue to rise and some areas are having more than others, so that concern still remains, and we are hoping that when we get a chance to meet with the Prime Minister and with the Minister of Education, that we can bring that matter to the table along with other outstanding matters that we have, and hopefully, they will consider the reasoning behind such a request having been made by the NTO, and they will look at that request favorably.
After the break, police have moved quickly and made arrests in the murders of Sean Menzies and Eden Mejia.
Benny's Deal Alert season is here, and we have some great deals for you.
Deals, deals, and more deals. From now up until December 31st, enjoy Deal Alert discounts on our line of paints, such as BH paints, Texturelight paints, and Tropical Colors paints. Deal Alert markdowns will also be applied on a wide selection of tiles, lights and fans, tools, appliances, and much more.
And remember, whenever you make a purchase, you get double tickets to enter our cash giveaway draw on December 19th to win $10,000.
That's right, it's a Deal Alert. It's a Benny's Deal Alert. So, shop now, get great deals, and your tickets for the chance to win the $10,000 grand prize only at Benny's.
Benny's in 60 seconds.
Every day, women and men in Belize become victims of gender-based violence, which results in emotional, sexual, financial, and physical abuse. Are you a survivor of gender-based violence and in imminent danger? Don't be afraid. There are ways you can get help. You can call our free emergency numbers at 0800-A-WAY-OUT or text or WhatsApp 672-9628 or call 911 to make a report at any time of the day or night. A police officer will assist you. You can also contact the Women and Family Support Department for women abuse or the Department of Human Services for child abuse in your district to discuss options for temporary housing or medium to long-term care and psychosocial support. You can also go directly to the family or magistrate court and obtain a protection order that restrains the abuser from coming in contact with you, or apply for an occupation and tenancy order that orders the abuser to leave the home for the period of time they see fit. Visiting your nearest hospital or polyclinic for medical attention or further referrals is also something you can do. Together, we can end gender-based violence in Belize. We are here to help you. This message is brought to you by the National Women's Commission with funding from the Engender and Spotlight projects, with support from the Department of Youth Services.
Desde el comienzo de la pandemia de COVID-19, Belize Healthcare Partners y nuestro equipo líder de especialistas médicos y cirujanos han tratado a muchos miles de pacientes hospitalizados y ambulatorios en el hospital de West Landiver, ciudad de Belize. Durante ese tiempo, no se han detectado casos de COVID-19 en el hospital. Las personas padecen de una variedad de enfermedades y lesiones cotidianas que deben tratarse, incluso si el paciente también padece de COVID-19 o vive en zonas de alto riesgo del país o tiene una enfermedad con síntomas similares a COVID-19. Esto incluye a los pacientes que reciben tratamiento en el Centro de Diálisis Miguel Rosado, que continúan recibiendo tratamiento varias veces a la semana en una instalación segura y aislada, utilizando el equipo de diálisis más moderno y el equipo mejor capacitado en Belice. Para aquellos de ustedes que son COVID-19 positivos, pero necesitan atención médica, háganoslo saber. Aún podemos brindar la mejor atención médica, pero en nuestro centro de aislamiento completamente equipado y separado, con un equipo médico dedicado y experimentado. Para todos nuestros clientes habituales del hospital principal, usted y sus familiares seguirán recibiendo una gama completa de los mejores servicios médicos del país en un ambiente muy limpio y seguro. El hospital estará dando un 10% de descuento en todos nuestros servicios. Con nuestros mejores deseos para todos ustedes, llame al 223-7870 para concertar una cita.
Belize City Police have charged 22-year-old Jeffrey Contreras with the crime of abetment to commit murder. He stands accused of playing a role in the murder of a well-known Bone & Bone employee, 57-year-old Sean Menzies. Menzies was fatally shot while on Lancaster Street in Belize City. He was in front of his yard smoking a cigarette when a barrage of bullets was fired at him. ACP Joseph Maivet says that another suspect is being sought.
In reference to the murder of Sean Menzies, which occurred in Belize City, police have since arrested and charged Jeffrey Contreras, 22 years, of a Belize City address for the crime of abetment to murder Other suspects are being sought in relation to this investigation. That would basically mean that you assisted in some way, those persons involved in the crime.
Sir, so do we expect charges to be levied at any time for the actual murder? Sir?
Well, we are working on that.
In the South, police in Punta Gorda have charged Adwan Usher for allegedly killing Eden Mejia. The 32-year-old was fatally shot shortly after midnight on November 19th. Police found his body on Pampana Street riddled with bullets. It was first reported that Usher had escaped the hail of bullets, but Assistant Commissioner of Police Joseph Maivet says that investigators believe that Usher was the gunman. He says the murder was a form of revenge.
We believe, based on the information that have been gathered, that it was some form of revenge for a previous incident.
Is there anything to suggest it being perhaps gang-related?
No, we haven't gathered that.
On Thursday morning, the Sakats police station was broken into and an assortment of firearms was stolen. The list includes a 12-gauge pump-action shotgun, 4 9mm pistols, and 2 rifles, stolen from under the nose of a police officer who resides at the station. While a reward of $2,000 is being offered for information leading to the weapons, as of tonight, none of the items have been recovered. The police officer who lives in the upper flat of the building, however, has been rearrested for questioning. ACP Joseph Maivet says they are looking for the main suspects as several searches have been conducted in the immediate area.
We are seeking a named suspect, and several searches have been conducted for him, as well as several house searches within the Benke and Sokots area. It is an ongoing investigation being led by a senior police officer from the criminal side, whilst the internal investigation also is still ongoing to see whether or not any of the procedures or principles were breached by those officers.
Sir, the Kaal family, specifically one woman, Miss Kaal, indicated that police forced their way into her home last week, Friday, in search of weapons and further detained her son. Any complaint has been made by this family?
I am not sure whether or not any complaint was made, but what I can say is that it is the normal procedure that police will announce their presence and their intentions, and a certain amount of time is given in order for you to open your door if it's locked. And if that time has expired and you haven't done so, then the police will use force in order to get in.
To be clear, none of these weapons have been recovered as yet?
No, none have been recovered so far.
Is it believed that they may still be in the community?
We are not going to go into that. We are following several leads, which we believe are credible at this time.
Okay, sir. Any update on the officer detained in this matter, the police officer who resides at the police station?
He was detained and released, and I believe he was detained a second time whilst the investigation is still ongoing.
Corozal resident Roy Burgess is in trouble with the law, not only for hitting a man with his car, but lying to police about it. Burgess was unmasked with his lie after police mounted an investigation into a hit-and-run accident which he reported. On Friday night, Corozal police were informed of a hit-and-run accident in the Santa Rita area. The officers visited the Corozal Community Hospital where Elias Villanueva was seen with bodily injuries. Burgess told police that he saw Villanueva on the street and decided to transport him to the hospital. But a witness of the crime told police that it was Burgess who hit Villanueva with his vehicle.
What the police know so far is that Villanueva was taken to the hospital by one Roy Burgess, who claimed that he was in the area of Santa Rita in Corozal when he saw Villanueva injured on the ground, and as a result took him to the hospital. However, our police investigation revealed that from other witnesses that it was Burgess who accidentally ran over Villanueva and thereafter was assisted by others who took him to the hospital. As a result, Burgess was detained and his vehicle was impounded, and he was later served with a notice of intended prosecution. Villanueva was later transferred to the Northern Regional Hospital and later to the Carl Hirschner Memorial Hospital, where he is listed in a stable condition.
5 men and a 17-year-old male minor have been arrested and charged for burglarizing the home of Gary Samuels on Wednesday night. Samuels and his family were at their residence in Borrowboom Village when the men barged into the house and held them up at gunpoint. The men escaped the premises with thousands of dollars worth of items. Quick police response intercepted the men near mile 14 on the George Price Highway. ACP Joseph Maivet says that several of the items were recovered.
In reference to the aggravated burglary that was committed at the home of Gary Samuels, police have since arrested and charged Donald Lemott, 35 years, Shaquille Patnett, 23, Ryan Welcome, 32, Philip Wallace, 32, Stephen Palmer, 21, and a 17-year-old minor, all for the crime of aggravated burglary. During their detention, a number of items were recovered from them, which the complainants identified to be their properties.
Family and friends of 52-year-old Victor Morales are asking for your help in locating him. Morales was last seen about 2 weeks ago on November 6th. His sister, Demetria Pineda, says that he was at her house in Roaring Creek Village before he headed to Gallardo Farm, where he works as a caretaker. Pineda says that it is unlike Morales to go missing for days, let alone weeks. Police have launched an investigation, but up to news time, foul play is not suspected.
I met him by Chun's shop, and I brought him home because he was drinking. And I fed him and thing, and then he said to me, thanks for the food. And I said, go straight home because you're drinking, you know. And he said, okay. And he left. And that's when I never see him again, and people start come and ask me about him. And then I get concerned because too much people asking me about him. They say, have you seen Victor? I said, no. And then they said, do you know where he is? I said, no. Why? And they said, well, because his house open and he not there. And the pastor came, and you know, and then I said, well, I get so concerned. I went to the police.
The last time she saw him was on the 6th of November in Roaring Creek Village. The farm was visited by her and her family, and there are no signs of him at the farm, hence the reason that a missing person report was launched. Police are conducting an investigation, and so far he has not been located either.
Police, family, anyone suspects foul play?
Not at this time, but we haven't ruled out any possibility.
Do you believe that he may have been hurt or harmed in any kind of way?
I don't know. The thing is that he was drunk. But I suspect for sure that he reached home because his bicycle was there when I got, you know. So he reached home. But he no use a phone, so there is nowhere I could communicate with him. My other sister said maybe he is with somebody because he sometimes gets sick bad. He have suffered ulcers.
When we come back, the region to pay tribute to Dr. Kenrick Leslie, the former head of the 5 Cs. Back in January of this year, we reported on the retirement of Dr. Kenrick Leslie from the Caribbean Community Climate Change Center. Dr. Leslie has been serving as the executive director at the regional entity since 2004, until he retired at the start of this year. This Wednesday, Leslie will be honored with a virtual farewell ceremony that will see the participation of regional dignitaries as well as CARICOM executives. During Leslie's tenure, he achieved a number of milestones that have helped to champion the region's response to climate change. Today, Dr. Colin Young, the new executive director of the 5 Cs and Leslie's successor, spoke with the media about some of Leslie's accomplishments through the center.
The center was established at a time where financing was always a challenge, and so the center since 2003 has been a self-finance institution. So even though it's a CARICOM institution, all of the funding to run the operations of the center is obtained by the center on its own. And that is in itself is a remarkable achievement that 15 years since establishment, the center is still able to raise all of the funds to conduct its operation and provide financing for climate change work in the region. And the numbers speak for themselves. In fact, since 2005 up until January 2020, the center has leveraged and mobilized over $250 million for implementation of a wide range of projects in all of the CARICOM countries in the region for climate change adaptation, for climate change mitigation, and particularly in terms of the research and gathering the data on climate change. So because of Dr. Leslie's efforts and his ability to forge partnerships with other regional institutions like the Caribbean Institute of Meteorology and Hydrology and the University of West Indies and the modeling group, and putting up automatic weather stations all over the Caribbean, along with coral reef monitoring station. All of this data is now being used to help guide countries in terms of their decision-making as it relates to climate change adaptation. The center also, under his leadership, became accredited to the Green Climate Fund, which is the world's largest fund that is set up to fund climate change mitigation and adaptation efforts. And the center is now accredited. It is one of 2 in the region.
Another notable achievement under Leslie's tenure is the light detection and ranging system, also known as LiDAR. It's a piece of technology that the center has made 40% more affordable for member states to access and boost their capacity to monitor and plan for physical changes to the land and marine environments. Dr. Young also spoke about the impact of climate change on the region, zoning in on Belize. He says the annual cost of climate change-related events such as droughts and floods is equivalent to 7% of the country's GDP. It's a significant number that Dr. Young says is a challenge for any country to navigate.
Why progress is sometimes hard to see is because you make some progress and then that same year you get impacted by a number of threats that kind of is 1 step front and 2 steps backwards. In some cases, I know from the data in Belize that each year for the last probably 10 years, that climate change associated impacts result in a staggering 7% loss to GDP. Damages that equate to about 7% losses to GDP. It means that if we add up all of the damages caused by floods, by droughts, by erosion, coastal erosion, and by hurricanes in any given year, the country will suffer losses that are equivalent to about 7% of its GDP. If you put that into context and you look at the annual growth of GDP, you will see that the damages are far in excess of the economic growth. So in other words, you're digging a hole each year because of the impacts of climate change. And in order for us to adapt, the scale of financing that is needed is going to be significantly greater than what the countries can afford.
During his interview with the media today, Executive Director Dr. Colin Young of the CARICOM Climate Change Center also shared that the center has a number of adaptation and mitigation projects running across CARICOM member states. One of the projects being explored in Belize is the use of a wild grass called Arunda donax as a source of renewable energy. Young says the issue of renewable sources of energy is at the heart of the climate change conversation in the region because the member states are heavily dependent on fossil fuels, which are fueling greenhouse gas emissions.
Belize is fortunately one of the leaders in the region in terms of the amount of energy it gets from renewable sources. Almost 60% of the energy that is used in Belize for electricity comes from hydro. The center has been doing research over the last couple of years on a species of grass called the wild cane. This grass grows very, very common down south. Pretty much any of those tall grasses you see after you pass on the Southern Highway that looks like cane, that's the wild cane. And it has a very high caloric value. And the center has conducted tests in the burners at BSI, and the idea would be that if this is a alternative feedstock, that grass can be mass produced and grown on fields that are marginal. It means that it grows on areas that no other crop would grow on, and if that can be scaled up, then it means that there can be a greater amount of biomass feedstock that goes into the turbines that then can generate electricity. The reason why this is so important is twofold. One is that whenever a country can produce domestic sources of energy, it becomes more energy secure. We don't have to depend on Mexico, for example, to bring in electricity. And obviously that would help with the balance of payments. You don't have to find US currency to buy foreign electricity. And the third reason why this is very important is that hydro is susceptible to the impacts of climate change. When you don't have rain, the rivers don't flow as much, and in some cases, if they get too low, then you don't have hydro resources to dispatch to generate electricity.
Coming up after the break, a much-needed fire truck for the Ladyville Fire Station. Today, the National Fire Service received a fire truck for its Ladyville station. It may seem like just a truck, but it is significant for the firefighters who will use it and the communities who will benefit from having this piece of equipment at their disposal in case of an emergency. To hand over this much-needed fire truck, the fire department and its U.S. donor partners held a brief ceremony in Ladyville. Here's that story.
The Ladyville Fire Station added another fire truck to its fleet today. This piece of equipment is an upgrade from the 2 trucks that make up the station's fleet. This new addition has a water carrying capacity of 1,000 gallons and in better condition than the 2 old trucks that the firefighters at the station have been using.
Today we welcome this 1987 Ford Grumman fire truck, which with its 1,000 gallon tank, it has a fire monitor on the top, and it came with all sorts of other pieces of equipment. When you look at this truck and you look at those trucks in the back, which we deliberately didn't hide because we wanted so you can see the contrast, this truck is 1,000 times better, and it will definitely serve the village of Ladyville so much better. The truck in the back was actually broken in half, right? So, and our firemen, dedicated as they are, still drove it to fire scenes.
The 10 firefighters of the Ladyville Fire Station will now use this truck to respond to fires in Ladyville and Lords Bank, where some 10,000 residents live. They will also respond to fires in Sandhill Village. It's a welcome donation for these communities, as echoed by Area Representative Dolores Balaramos Garcia, as well as Chairman of Ladyville, who was a key person behind the scenes to get this truck for his village.
It's Ladyville and Lords Bank. And if I am not mistaken, this area is bigger than Punta Gorda by far. It is a sprawling suburban community with over 10,000 population. And I am even told, if I'm correct, that the firefighters can go as far up as Sandhill. Am I correct in that? Yes, okay. So basically, it's desperately needed, highly appreciated, and we thank everyone responsible.
The truck is here now, so we are very much once again, I say we are glad and grateful for it. I believe, I must say firefighters, that this is a 1997 truck, and you could see how it looks, right? So we are asking likewise to please take care of it. Take care of it like it's your personal vehicle. Okay, so let's crank up this baby, and hopefully we not get no fire call, but just be on the ready.
This truck is a donation that was made possible with the help of a number of partners in the United States. With the help of the U.S. Embassy, the truck was brought to Belize on a flight with the help of the Denton Humanitarian Aid Program.
We must first and foremost recognize the generosity of the U.S. non-governmental organization Global Gear Initiative for finding and buying this fire truck for Belize. This specific donation continues the work begun after a chance meeting in 2012 when firefighter Jim York of Ohio met Key Hawker Fire Chief Miguel Mattis while on vacation. I think Jim was on vacation and Chief Mattis was working. Through their partnership, the first donated truck arrived in Key Hawker in 2017. Since then, the United States entities have donated 3 more fire trucks to fire stations in San Pedro, Corozal, and Ladyville. And in December, as we've already heard, a 5th fire truck will arrive for Punta Gorda. This actual truck behind or next to me here comes from the Volunteer Fire Department of Kelly, North Carolina. And in the short note that accompanied the fire truck on its journey from Kelly, Brandon Norris, the fire chief of the Volunteer Fire Department, wrote, quote, "Dear Chief Longsworth, this truck has served us well for many years. We hope it will serve your department well long into the future. Be safe in every situation, and we will be praying for you all."
Reporting for News 5, I'm Andrea Polanco.
Back in September, the government came under harsh criticism for the sale of the National Fire Service headquarters in Belize City. The government at the time sold the fire station to Atlantic Bank for some $2.8 million. And as we have reported, the fire department must now vacate that spot in December, less than a month. The previous administration's proposed new site for the construction of a new fire station headquarters is on Chetumal Street. But does the new minister have a say about how things will move forward. Today, Orlando Habet spoke on the issue of the fire station, noting that they will now rent a new space to house the firefighters in the interim. He says he visited the headquarters and that it is in a deplorable state. Habet also spoke of the other challenges that plague the department, such as dilapidated equipment. Here is what he had to say.
Our firefighters, as has been mentioned, can only do the work if they have the equipment to work with. We know that in the past we have had some problems, and perhaps we'll continue having some. But as long as we can work together, see what the needs and necessities are, and we can go solving these problems one by one, we will be able to achieve the objectives that have been set forth in the policies of for the firefighters and our ministry. I did do a quick tour with Mr. Gillett of the office in Belize City, and you know that that office has to be relocated, the station has to be relocated. There's a lot of work to be done. A new building will be constructed, hopefully starting pretty soon. But in the meantime, the firefighters will have to be in a building that we will have to rent for a period of time until that building is constructed. And what is important here is that, yes, we appreciate the trucks. We appreciate the equipment. And one of the needs that was informed was that while these trucks may be able to out a small fire, in communicating with Mr. Gillett, what he was mentioning was that in Belize City especially, where there are a lot of homes that are still lumber-based and fires burn quickly, you need to have something like a Bowser, a larger truck that can tag along with the fire truck so that then you do not run out of water quickly. And also there was mentioned that you do not know what you will do with all the rest of the older trucks. Well, I hope that through the ministry's policies that we can look at the other villages, perhaps smaller than Ladyville, but have 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 persons as a population in those villages and have no fire trucks and no way of outing fires.
And that's the news. Tonight's broadcast is available in text at channel5belize.com. You can also connect with us on our Facebook page at News 5 Live. I'm Marlene Cuellar. Thanks for joining us. And from all of us here at News 5, please remember to wash your hands, keep your social distance, and stay safe. Good night.